This is part 3. If you are just joining me, find part 1 and part 2 before you jump into this one. But I reconnected with an old friend who was kind of like a cousin because we grew up together. My mom was best friends with his aunt. We had all the family things together, so we just kind of call each other cousins. It's easier that way. I reconnected with him and started meeting some new people, and my world started to open up, and I started to understand that there was a lot more wrong in my relationship than just the fact that he was, constantly stepping out or flirting with stepping out, even if he wasn't fully stepping out of the marriage. And I was realizing that he was very controlling. We were all walking on eggshells. My entire world was an attempt to make sure he wasn't going to freak out that day. And I could go forever and ever on that. And if there was a book that was ever written, that's where a lot of it would be written. But because I've been to a lot of therapy and I figured out a lot of it now, but my worldview started opening and I started realizing how bad the relationship was in so many ways. And I suggested therapy. I was still under the impression that maybe we could save this. And he agreed to the therapy. It didn't really help. We had been in therapy before. We had done the self-help books. We had done a lot of stuff before. It just never really helped. But I was in a place where, we're not having babies anymore. Now we're raising our family. Let's try to make this a little bit better, right? And so we kind of did that. And then there was a night where he wanted some, couple time. And I was exhausted. And for the first time, really ever, aside from right after having a baby, I said no. I wasn't mean about it. I wasn't disrespectful about it. I just was exhausted. And I said no. And the rage that I saw in him was terrifying. And I knew in my soul that all of the mistreatment was going to become physical abuse if I allowed myself to stay. And the warning signs were every single cell in my body was crying out for me to end this situation. Not just for me, but for my children. Because in the last 6 previous months, I had started noticing some of the dynamics of all of my girls were basically doormats and my boys were becoming this superior white man cliche that could do whatever because that's my right as a natural born white man. And it all just kind of culminated into this moment, and I got a backbone and I said no more. And I told him I didn't want to be married anymore, and I kicked him out. And he was shocked. He didn't think that I meant it. He thought that he could continue all of his nonsense for the rest of his life and that I would just keep taking him back and making it work. And to be fair, I had never shown him that I meant it. So of course he was going to feel that way. I had never once, even when he had done the biggest betrayal, there was never even a moment where I had really separated myself from it. It was an apology, and then it was life right back to normal. I was not allowed to feel sad or upset or angry. He apologized, and it wiped the slate clean because you repent, you are forgiven, you move on. That's what we were taught. There were never any consequences for his behavior. So, of course, for 17 years, he had been allowed to do whatever he wanted. He could apologize, and then life would go back to normal. So, of course, he didn't think I meant it. But I did. And I did agree to one more round of counseling, which was it was kind of a mistake, but not really. I had my own personal counselor separately, and then we had our couples counselor, and then he wound up seeing the couples counselor by himself, which of course anybody that knows anything knows that that's a bad idea. She gave him a book to read. At that point, he was living in the master bedroom. My mom had moved out. She was feeling a little stronger and wanted to get away from the drama of the divorce. I had moved down to her mother-in-law apartment, and the kids were staying put while we were waiting to sell the house, and he and I would kind of rotate out. So I would stay with my mom or friends. He would stay with his parents when it was our off times. So my youngest was like 18 months or so, 18 to 20-ish months during this time frame. So there were times when he would toddle into dad's room, right? So I would have to go in and get him. I was very respectful of his space, but there were times I had to go get the little one because he could open doors. I saw some things, and I wonder if he did it on purpose, but I'll never know. But I'm glad I saw them. He basically had a shrine in his whole back wall with photos and art and like encouraging words of like, she's not gonna leave, it's gonna be okay. It was creepy. My mom wanted me to leave right then and there and get a restraining order, but I didn't know what else to do. I saw the book that that his counselor had given him. It said something like How to Listen, and I thought, oh, that's a good book. He definitely could use some help listening, right? Because he hears it, but it doesn't internalize or anything. But the subtext was like, so they can do what you want, or something like that. And I was like, what the heck is this counselor teaching him to do? I also saw a photo book from the woman that he was dating very seriously and had been dating for a long time, while simultaneously trying to save our marriage at marriage counseling. So I took all of this information to my counselor, and I was like, I don't know what's real anymore. How do I do this? And so she gave me some tips on how to kind of navigate, how to find out, when somebody's lying and when somebody's not lying. And it was very clear that he had gotten our marriage counselor all wrapped up in the manipulation. And so I ended that. I ended any and all communication. I sent him confirmation that I had seen the photos, like, of the book that she'd given him for Christmas. Such a nice Christmas gift. Anyway, I was just done. I was done. And so kind of after the dust settled and the paperwork was done, I started rebuilding my life, and a lot of therapy, a lot of crying, a lot of figuring out, why did I let myself accept all of this for so long? I don't really feel like I blamed him necessarily. And some people say I stayed that last year on purpose to like make it harder for him. I didn't. I didn't know I was going to leave until that night when he got angry and I was scared. I found out so much more, during the like divorce and separation process. I found out so much more from my kids and from other friends, and it was just like every week there was another confirmation that I had made the right choice. And so at that point, I was looking at dating again and trying to figure out how to navigate all of that, because I knew that most people fall back into those same patterns, and I intentionally did not want to do that. I would rather be single than fall back into that pattern. I don't want to put myself or my kids through that again. And so I did a lot of therapy. I did a lot of reflection, trying to figure out why I allowed myself to be in that dynamic. And I discovered that it wasn't just that relationship that had that dynamic. It was with my mom, with my friends. I kind of had to go through this purging process in my life where I kind of reestablished my own personal boundaries, communicated that with everyone, and anybody who could grow with me was welcome to stay, but anyone who wanted to remain in that old pattern would just have to go with God. And I would always think of them fondly and be grateful for the good times, but I couldn't continue in that anymore. And so as I went on to the next phase of my life, it was like a culling, like all the bad was left behind, and I was kind of starting fresh, and I wanted to make really good choices for my benefit, but also for the benefit of my kids. And I think the biggest lesson I learned through that entire 18-year marriage is that people don't change. They don't. They can grow, but they're just not going to change. They are who they say they are in the beginning. And if I look back to the beginning, all of the signs were there. I just refused to believe them.